With Frank Napolitano and Paul Rushforth, here is Steve Gregory.
The gang is all together again, ladies and gentlemen.
The gang is back.
I didn't get a chance to ask, who do I thank for the coffee?
I told you, we don't talk about it unless it's Paul the buy, so we're not talking about it.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's a coffee. It's a coffee.
Welcome back, Paul. You had a good week last week?
I did. I took my girlfriend away for her birthday. We went to Montreal.
You're still together?
Well, my visa took a beating, though, that's for sure.
I'll bet it did. It's not cheap to go out, is it?
Nope.
You're the reason for inflation. Stop it. Just stop it, okay?
I gave her a shopping spree for her birthday, and she shopped. She shopped.
Did she find a guy? Hey, listen, are home values up or down along the LRT?
Well, you know what? For the longest time, you wanted to buy along the LRT. Now I don't think anyone's even going to use the LRT. But I do like when Mayor Sutcliffe came out and said that Phase 3 is not going ahead until they can fix Phase 1 and Phase 2, which is awesome because they need to fix that before they start spending more taxpayers' money.
Yeah, forget Phase 2. Let's just get Phase 1 going
Well,
first.
that's it. Let's just fix that. And then, you know what? It's a shame they didn't use someone who actually knew what they were doing. Like, go to the London Underground and get the tube system, like get the guy who organized or the girl who organized that tube system to get here to do ours because, God, have they failed on that bad.
Yeah, it's one of those seemed like a good idea at the time. But when it works great, right?
I took it last Saturday, and I thought it was fantastic. Again, when it works, it's beautiful. I mean, it works really, really well. It's a clean train, very clean train, very smooth. But unfortunately, it's been down probably as much as it's been up in the 3 years it's been running. So hopefully they can figure it out. I'd like to think that they'll be able to figure it out at some point.
It's a great idea. I mean, you take a look at the bigger cities like the Chicagos, the Torontos, the LAs, the London. I mean, you go to London. I mean, I lived there for 4 years. You don't want a car. Like the tube system is so brilliant. You don't even need a car and you don't want a car. You can get anywhere you want to go really quick.
Yeah, New York is no different, right? I mean, New York, you take the subway. And listen, the concept is good. I think they forgot to kind of consider what our winters are like. And so you would think if it's down during the winter, well, we kind of accept that. We're Canadians. Hey, the weather's brutal. This is not a reason to be down right now. That's the problem. This is where they lose confidence. If it happens because there's an ice storm, we can understand, I think, as Canadian taxpayers. But when it happens like this, no, not acceptable.
Well, when you're leaving the house, you want to be able to get to where you're going, and you're never sure.
And listen, I love the idea, right? I mean, the idea. Now, of course, with COVID hit, no one was on the road.
That's the other problem.
We didn't need it, right?
And now nobody's working downtown anymore.
Well, yeah, I was telling you guys this morning. I heard this morning on the radio. I can't remember if it was on CFRA or wherever.
Must have been.
Must have been. That's all I listened to is CFRA. But I heard that there is $800 million of unused office space right now going to waste
in
Ottawa.
Insane.
It's insane. Like, you don't need to get me started about the people not going back to work because that's like Frank talking about gas prices and oil prices. It gets his blood boiling.
Yeah, you think everybody should work from home, right?
Yeah, no, it drives me nuts. I think it's so disrespectful to employers.
No, I just think what bothers a lot of company owners is the entitlement that people feel like they should be allowed to work from home without considering what the companies are going through and the fact that they've signed leases and they're committed to those spaces and they want to put them to use. Not to mention the fact that you want your teams to be together at some point. Like if you're working from home, everybody's individual, and there's certain jobs that you, as a team, you work much better and much more efficient.
Especially.
It really
culture.
is.
Culture. The biggest thing in an office is culture. That's what people want is culture.
Yeah.
And when you have people working from home and not at the office, it kills your culture. Just kills it.
Yeah, there's no feeling of belonging, no camaraderie, no team.
And
no
Teams
team.
doesn't do that, and Zoom doesn't do that.
But you tell me, and then people say, you know what, I'm more productive at home. And I say that's bull crapola. You are not more productive at home. You're screwing the pooch way too often.
I'm more productive after a few drinks.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say that there's some people that work more at home than they do but again, those are those workaholics that you have in the office. They're no different at home. I mean, they work just as long and they'll start earlier. They'll do things a little later after 5.
And you tend to work more days too. You'll do things on Saturday. You'll do things on Sunday.
Personally, during COVID, now it was busier, but I worked longer hours during the COVID that we were at home than I did when I went to the office. At least the office, I was able to say at 6 o'clock, hey, I'm going home for supper, and I shut it down. Where during COVID, I'd shut it down, go eat, and then right back up in the office and start working again.
A little different when you own the company, though.
I get it. But at the same time, I mean, I just think that there's other people that did the same thing as I did. And, the real estate went through, the first 3 or 4 months during COVID, there was nothing to do. Because nobody was listing. You couldn't go see a house. But then it ramped up, and then it got crazy. And I think, Paul, the first probably 18 months, you were okay with working from home because there was so much uncertainty out there with the disease and everything that it was okay.
Yeah, it was a different time.
Yeah. As we get back to normal, I think what bothers a lot of people is the fact that, we're back to normal. So we should get back to the way it was before, and maybe we shouldn't have to adapt.
And you know what?
Totally.
As long as the metrics are there, then sometimes I'm a little bit more flexible. But if we're down on certain things, then I have no flexibility whatsoever. Get back to the office and fix what's broken, and let's get working harder. And
the good news is we're up in housing starts. Did you see those numbers?
No, I didn't.
Unbelievable.
Mostly in Toronto and Vancouver, though.
No, here.
Well, here too, but there was a big chunk in Toronto.
12,085 last month compared to 4,820 in May.
That's great. We need housing starts.
That's huge.
Yeah. I'm starting to see a lot more building around Ottawa now. Everywhere I'm driving now, I'm seeing towers, I'm seeing building, I'm seeing... I hope I've said this before, and people all the time, we heard shovels in the ground. We need shovels in the ground, and I think until we get more homes, we're still going to be in trouble. Like we're still under 4,000 listings on the market right now. Here we are in July. We're 30.
But now this is like the deadest time of the year usually, isn't it? Like third week of July,
apart from Christmas.
I think that you never know. You never know, right? I think what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, going through COVID, not being able to vacation, not being able to do a lot of things, being locked down. I think summers are a little bit slower now because of that. In 2017, 18, 19, no, summers were still pretty robust. But, listen, a lot of my team are on vacation right now. Realtors take vacations. Consumers take their foot off the gas in the summer. They go to cottage country. They go on vacations with their family. So it's usually you're going to see a little bit of a slower summer. Last 2 or 3 years, we've seen a very slow summer.
Yeah.
Very slow summer.
So if you want to get in before the school year...
Oh, you got to buy now.
You got to get on it, right?
You got to get on it. I mean, we're only, 45 days away from school starting?
And that's hard to get into that house. I mean, you're setting yourself up maybe to close in the middle of September, end of October anyway. So.
Oh, and what we're seeing right now is that the part of the market that's a little bit struggling now is those move-up homes, mainly because the people with the first-time homebuyer homes, no one's buying them, right? Because the first-time homebuyers have taken themselves out of the market with the interest rate hikes. So if no one's buying those, how do those people sell to move up to the next one, right? And there's some communities. I mean, I talked that we're listing starved with less than 4,000 listings on the market, but there's some communities that are flooded with homes, certain types of homes on the market, and they're just not moving at all. So it's
across Canada, executive homes are moving like crazy for some reason.
Like higher end homes.
Yeah, very, very high end.
Well, you got to look.
I guess they got the money, right? Who cares? I don't need a mortgage.
Well, a lot of them don't need a mortgage, or they have a small mortgage, or if my mortgage went up by $500, it doesn't really affect me. So yeah, you're going to see that happening. But we're starting to see, even though we do have the prices on the incline, there's some areas that are a little bit stagnant, and some areas are dropping a little bit. So it'll be an interesting, let's say, next 4, 5, 6 months to see where we end up here in Ottawa.
Still, the last I read, they said home prices are going to go up 8% year over year. By the end of the year, we're supposed to be up 8%. Do you see that?
Well, keep in mind, we started the year at $691.
Right.
So you say up by 8%, you're adding another, $40,000-$50,000 on that $691. So they're going to be at around $740, $730. We're only at $645 right now. So
I know. And this is a recent article that I read.
Well, that's probably an article potentially that was written or constructed before the rate hikes. Because if you would have asked me this before the rate hikes, I would have said, we're going to be up a little bit, but maybe not 8%. But since the rate hikes, there's no chance that's going to happen.
Speaking of which, what happens September 6th, Frank? I know it's too early to tell, but what's the word on the street?
The word on the street.
They've got to pause, right?
So believe it or not, I mean, there's these websites that give percentages of what the chances are. As of Thursday, it was 79% chance that they were going to leave it flat and 21% chance that they were going to increase it by a quarter point.
And where do these numbers come from? From economists?
No, these are basically what they look at. As statistics come out, they kind of change those odds.
Okay.
So
retail was up, but very, very, very minimally.
Very little. What was interesting is the inflation report came out this week at 2.8, which is within that 2 to 3%. But then you dig a little deeper into it, and that's where you have some concerns because
gas came down.
That's the only reason that the inflation number came down. And here's the government boasting about the fact, look, we've got it. We're the best G7 country. But as much as gas is important, less Canadians are traveling, so I think they can make up for that. What Canadians can't do is not eat. While food prices are up 9.1%.
Yeah.
What Canadians can't do is have shelter costs go up. Well, shelter costs are up 30% because the interest rate. So
they say
really
gas
think
is
about
down,
it,
but I saw $1.60 today. It
seems
seems the same to me.
Apparently, it was $2.05 at this time last year.
Really?
Apparently, that's what they're saying
For a very brief period. Then.
In June of 20, and I don't know. I got an electric car, so I don't keep track anymore. But
I think if you want inflation at 1.9%, you'll lower the price of grapes.
Oh, or cherries.
That's
or
it.
cherries.
Or watermelons.
My girlfriend wanted grapes the other day for her son. I went and got grapes. They're $13.99. I was like, "Are you serious?"
That's insane.
$13.99 for grapes.
Yeah. And gee, how much of a grape is water?
Yeah.
Yeah. But think about. So now inflation's at 2.8. We've had the gas prices come down. We've had the food prices still elevated at 9.1, which doesn't correlate because the reason that they said the food prices was up is because the cost of transportation to get them everywhere. But now that cost of transportation's come down, and yet the price of food is still up.
Now it's weather.
So now they're blaming everything else because they're always finding a reason to keep their profits nice and high. Because once you get, again, you need to understand the way the corporate world works. If you make a certain amount of profit, there is never, ever going to be a goal that's set lower than that, regardless of what the economy is. The goal is always to set it higher. So they're not going to drop the food prices like everybody's thinking because they just won't do it because they like their profits where they are. But what's really bothersome right now is the fact that shelter is one of the biggest components of why the inflation it's come down, but it could be in that 2% radius that they want it to be if shelter wasn't there. So the problem is that shelter is going to continue to stay up because for another 6 months at least anyway, until January, which is when he finally stopped raising prime for 4 months. So we got another 4 or 5 months of the inflation number probably being higher than it should because of shelter cost.
Higher than they say it should.
Yeah, and I don't know why
they want it.
And I don't know why 2%'s the number. I don't know why 3% can be
yeah.
the new number based on today's
world. What's wrong with 2.8? Let's just move on.
And move on, and let's say, okay, let's start to lower interest rates so that Canadians can start to afford living comfortably. When you read articles like I have this week of single parents that are making $70,000 and having a hard time being able to make ends meet. $70,000 is a decent salary for a single person.
Not in today's
with one
world.
child. No, but it should be, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It should be a decent salary for you to be able to afford your rent, be able to put food on the table and live comfortably. Maybe not get a whole bunch of other extras, but at least be able. But people are saying we're struggling at $70,000 because 35% of it has gone to taxes before you even. And by the time you start adding everything else that we need and our necessities in life today, there's no money left over. So that's a struggle.
We got a lot of gouging too. 2 years ago, my Orleans office snow plowing was $4,000. Last year, because of diesel the way it is, was $9,100.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what it is this year now.
$10,000.
Yeah, no.
I said diesel's gone down.
Yeah.
Well, I charged you $9 last year. It's $10 this year.
Yeah,
got to go up, like you said.
Yeah.
Once it's there.
Once it's there.
Once that target is set, it's not going down. It's only going to go up.
Yeah, absolutely.
521 Talk 521-8255. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show.
This will be a positive segment, Steve. We're not talking about.
We're not talking about real estate or mortgages.
Okay, the positive, and again, there's always positives. Customers that are coming up for renewal. I listen to them, and the conversation never starts off well because they're coming off of 3.29, and now they're in the mid fives. So that never goes well to begin with. But where the tone changes a little bit is when I say to them, when we did your mortgage 5 years ago, your property was worth $400. What do you think it's worth today?
$600.
Then, my neighbors listed it for $650. I said, $200. Think about that for a second. I get it. It's going to be painful for the next 5 years if you take a 5-year fixed. But think about this. You went up $250,000 tax-free in 5 years. And there's no way that you can discount that. Yes, it's painful right now, but look at the bright side. You're up $250,000 in 5 years in your equity. So,
well, just in the last 3 years, we've seen the average sale, not including 2023, but in 1920, and 21, we've seen the average sale price go up 8.4%, 19.9%, and 22%. That's what we've seen. So it's I mean you've accumulated, like Frank said.
So even if it's flat, even if it goes down a bit, you're still way ahead.
Way up. And we'll probably never see this again. I mean, if you look Ottawa historically, is anywhere between 3 and 5%.
Five is a good year.
5's a great year, but we're in between 3 and 5% every year is comfortable. Some years we're 1 and 2%, and other years we're 7 or 8%. But to go up 19.9 and 22% back-to-back years is unheard of. I mean, that's just unheard of. 50%, about 50% in 3 years, which is crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And variable rate mortgages for 40 years were the best thing.
Yeah.
It's just the last 12 months, it's been painful. Anybody in a variable rate mortgage last 12 months, just bad luck.
But why
It
are
really
the
is.
short-term mortgages so high now?
Well, we've got inverted bond cycles right now. So generally speaking, when that happens, that means we're on the cusp of a recession, which we've been saying for 6 months it's supposed to come. But, people like Paul who go spend big money on a weekend like he did last weekend.
He screws it up for all of us,
He
doesn't
does.
Yeah,
he messes it up. Like, just Paul is the reason that inflation's not going to come down.
You mean
July.
hold on, you mean Petra. You mean Petra.
Petra,
Petra was the
Blame
reason.
Petra, yeah.
She
Blame
forced my
Petra.
credit card out of my wallet.
No, but there's still some spending happening. That being said, like you said, the retail sales have certainly calmed down a lot.
Yeah, they're pretty flat. They were up, but just very,
Yeah,
very low.
very,
Pretty
very
flat.
low.
Pretty flat.
Pretty flat. It'll be interesting to see, but I still go to restaurants that are jam-packed, which is crazy. But then you also walk by some restaurants that are really struggling right now, and they've got very, very
Or
few
shorter
tables.
hours. They just can't get people.
Well, they close at 9. I mean, you used to be able to go to a restaurant at 10, 10:30 and still grab a meal. Here at 9 o'clock, if you're the kitchen pretty well closes because they just don't have the staff to do it. So
And no one's opening early anymore. Like I tried to go to a bunch of stores the other day, and I was there at like 9:30, 9:40, and every store opened at 10. Since when did?
Because they're all working from home, Paul.
Yes, they worked the first 2 hours from home, right? Yeah.
But commercial real estate is another thing we can talk about. I mean, this is where, it's going to get ugly again because unless, like some people on commercial mortgages, sometimes you're in a variable rate mortgage,
I am.
which means you've already paid the price, but your lease is your lease. If you can lease to tenants that's got another 3 years left on it, you don't get to raise the rent because they're locked in, but yet your costs have gone up tremendously. But for those that took fixed rate mortgages, if those mortgages are coming up for renewal now, this is where all of a sudden they're going to have their walls to the back or their back to the walls because their leases, again, are likely still in place, yet their costs have gone up tremendously.
Yeah, my commercial mortgage is 8%. It's insane.
8%. And what was it when you got it?
3.85.
Yeah.
Wow.
3.85. It's gone up to 8%. It's just like. And
So again, commercial values have gone up too. So, you looked at your property, what you paid for it versus
Yeah.
what it's worth today.
Yeah.
It's gone up too. But
So far.
yes,
but that doesn't help you on the day-to-day
Yeah, it
events.
doesn't.
And that's the
Cash
struggle.
flow.
So that's where Canadians,
Yeah.
that are coming up for mortgage renewals, they've got to adjust their focus and maybe not be so aggressive on the amortization, increase their amortization for a short period of time for the next 5 years, just so that they can continue to live the lifestyle that they want to, and then be more aggressive, hopefully 5 years from now when the interest rates are back into reasonable territory.
Imagine the
Frank,
weekend
we're-
Petra would have had if the interest rates were low.
Seriously. You talk about those commercial mortgages. It's and I've talked to 2 or 3 different commercial agents and says, where is it going? Because I own all my commercial offices, and I'm like, where's this going? Am I just going to be stuck with this? And there's 2 trains of thought. There's the train of thought that. Yes, I'm going to be stuck with this commercial real estate as all these people decide not to go back to work and they don't need the space anymore. And then there's others that say, no, employers realize that they were jamming people in like sardines and people aren't comfortable anymore with that. They want more space. So some people are actually grabbing more space. I'm usually very positive on everything. I probably think it's the first one I mentioned. I think there's a lot of people that don't need the space anymore. And so I think there may be a glut of commercial real estate on the market coming up, if not already.
Yeah, but your buildings are the perfect size because somebody that would buy your building is somebody that would say, I don't need as much space and go a little bit smaller.
Yeah. Well, I'm lucky in my Canada office because I have 2 buildings, right?
Yeah.
Like I have two sides to side. I have New Look Eyewear in there. My Orleans office, it could be subdivided and I could, have different offices and different businesses in there. But yeah, you're right. I'm not stuck with a government downtown
it's
tower.
the high rises that are, yeah.
But I said at the start of the show, $800 million in unused space right now. And I'm going to say, I don't know, but I'm going to say, I'd say a majority of it is in downtown Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
Downtown Ottawa, as the government, isn't going back to work and there's all
So
these
what do we do with these buildings then? Does it cost too much to convert them to condos?
Someone will. I mean, we're already seeing office buildings downtown on Rideau that are now student housing. We might see them turn into dorms. Even hotels. Hotels aren't being as used like they used to be. I mean, they're so friggin' expensive. But some of these hotels might turn into university dorms or something like that as well.
Expensive to convert them, though.
It's very expensive. But someone will see the use for it. But yeah, you might see some of these buildings turn into condos for sure.
Hey, when was the last time somebody walked in and asked you for a rate guarantee, Frank?
We're doing them now.
Seriously?
Because the reason we're doing rate guarantees is because we've seen rates go up over the last 2 months. So we paused it for a little bit, and now we're seeing them again because, again, we've seen rates go up. Now, again, so here's an example of the craziness, and should we hold that thought till we come back? Yeah, let's hold it because I think I want everybody to hear what the headlines are from these business papers on a day-to-day basis from one day to another.
We'll talk craziness with Frank when we come back. 521-TALK, 521-8255. Waiting, Frank. We've been waiting with bated breath.
All right, so these are the what I read on a daily basis, and sometimes what these financial papers will do is they'll put their headlines for a week. So they'll say, here's our top 5 headlines. So this is this week. On Monday, the mortgage market isn't sending the signal home buyers need on affordability. On Tuesday, bond yields climb as investors await fresh economic data. On Wednesday, bond yields fall as investors weigh global inflation outlook. On Thursday, bond yields rise as investors consider economic outlook. So that's what's happening in the world today. So
no one knows what's going on.
Nobody knows what's going on because it changes from and like total opposites from one day to another. And an example is the inflation rate came in lower, and yet the bond yields went up. Well, it's not supposed to go that way. It's supposed to go if the inflation comes in lower, the bond yields come down. But instead, they went up 15 basis points the day after. There's no rhyme or reason behind it. There really isn't.
So how do you figure the future then? How do you
forecast? We used to have some confidence. I used to be fairly confident, say rates are coming down, rates are going up. I can't do that anymore because common sense is out the window, and other factors come into play that it happens so quick. All it takes is one report to come out on something, and everything changes on a dime.
But investors jump much quicker than they used to.
Way quicker. Look at banks now are starting to pay interest on savings accounts because they're being forced to, because the public is saying, because they're seeing that the public is now taking money out of bank accounts and putting it elsewhere.
Yeah.
So the banks are saying, we're starting to lose all this money in. So what do we got to do? We got to increase interest. We got to entice Canadians to keep money in the bank accounts. Otherwise, they're going to take it elsewhere, which they are.
But regardless of those headlines, it's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen anyways. I mean, like for the longest time, get into variable. Everyone jumps
40 years, it was the best choice.
Everyone jumps into variable. Look what happened to variable, right?
Yeah, but we were told it was going to be safe into 2024.
Yeah, I know. And even the market, like it's hard to know what is going to go on. And people are like, I'm going to wait. I'm not going to sell now. I'm going to wait till spring 2024. What's the market going to be like? I don't know.
Yeah. But we can all agree on one thing. Real estate is a safe investment.
100%.
It's a safe, long-term investment. Does it come with some risks at times? Of course it does. I mean, but there's risks and everything. But the one thing we can say about real estate is that if you hold it over a long period of time, you will get some wealth from it if you do it properly. Yeah. If you refinance every 5 years and always go to the limit, well, then you're not building any equity in it. But if you start with a 25-year amortization, 10 years from now, you're down to 15 years. More than half your mortgage should be paid at that point. You've built up a lot of tax-free equity in the home that you live in. And so I think that's the foundation to me real estate is still the foundation of your financial plan and your retirement plan. So again, I have people that call me all the time and say, Frank, I'm retiring in 8 years. My mortgage is 10 years. My goal is to be mortgage free. And now I say to them, why? Mm-hmm. What is wrong with having a $100,000 mortgage on your $900,000 home at retirement? At that point, again, as stupid as the rules seem to be, you're a first-time home buyer at 30 years old buying your first home, you can only have a 25-year amortization. But you could be 65 and you want to refinance your house, $100,000, you get a 30-year amortization. It doesn't make any sense, but you can do that. So if you really want to stay in that home, there's nothing wrong with keeping a $100,000 mortgage and amortizing it over 30 years because you still have $800,000 in equity. So your payment's not going to be that big to carry a $100,000 mortgage. So don't don't stop your life for the next 5 years just to be mortgage free. It doesn't make any sense.
No, and we've always said real estate's a long-term play. If you bought in January, February, March, or April of last year, yeah, you're probably a little bit underwater with your house because you bought in the prime, so it's very disappointing.
And that was another anomaly. If you bought then right at the peak, I mean, that just didn't happen 2 years ago, 3 years ago. You look over the last 5 years, if your mortgage is coming up for renewal now, not only have you made so much money, but you paid down a heck of a lot of equity.
Yeah. So don't be disappointed if you bought at that time frame because it is going to bounce back. It's a long-term play. I mean, if you have to sell, then you probably not going to be happy. But if you don't have to sell, it's okay. It's a long-term play. And think about it. Even if you bought at that time and you bought at this really, really high peak, most likely you also had to sell to buy, and you would have sold at that peak as well. So you've probably made good money there. So I wouldn't panic too much if you bought in that time frame because we will bounce back and you will eventually be above water.
So if you bought 3 years ago and you need to get out of your mortgage, the penalty should be less now, right?
Well, you're 2 years. The problem is if you bought 3 years ago, the rates 3 years ago were you would think that
2.89.
Yeah, 2.89. So now the fact that the banks are selling them at 5, logic would say that you would be 3 months penalty. But again, depending on how the calculations are and what the posted rates were at the time versus what the rates are now, your penalty could be surprisingly a lot more than you expect it to be. It should be, logically, it should be 3 months interest because if you're at 2.89 with 2 years left and a 2 year rate today is at 6%, the bank's lending it out at 6%. For what reason do they have to charge you more than 3 months interest? Because they're making 3 points on lending that money back out. Yeah. On a 2 year mortgage. So Frank, it makes no sense.
You probably don't know this answer, but in the States, how do they do the penalties there with those 30-year mortgages?
They have set calculations, and again, each lender is different, but they have, some of them could be 6 months interest if you break it early. What's happening in the States, you've got a lot of real estate agents, people are less likely to move now, the ones that have because they have 30-year mortgages, so they lock in for 30 years at 3%, and today it's at 7%. And if your mortgage isn't portable, I believe that some of them are, but some have restrictions. If you took the lower rate, then they take away the portability. So if you do one of those, then all of a sudden you're not enticed to move because you can't take the mortgage with you, and there's no way you want to be paying 7%, so you just stick it out. So I think this is where we'll start to see some volatility within the real estate market in the U.S. because some people will want to move, but they're not going to because it doesn't make any financial sense.
We're seeing that now, and it's happening usually in some of the luxury markets. So when you look at the Californias, the Floridas, and all that, some of those luxury markets where they're, yes, some of them have some wealth down there, but if your average sale price is $2, $3, $4 million, I mean, you're probably not making a ton more than maybe someone here. Yeah. But so they're in these mortgages that are probably mortgaged to the hilt, and they're in these 3% mortgages, and now they're going to be in a 7%. And a higher priced home, they're just not moving. And that's where some of the agents that I know from those areas are complaining that they're like, there's no movement going on at all because no one wants to move out of their house because of the rates.
And the other place where you're going to see it is for people that want to go down south and rent a house for 3 months or 4 months of the winter months, significant increases in what it costs to rent a house today. Because, again, the costs have gone up in the States, and somebody that may have renewed their mortgage, because you could get a 5-year mortgage in the States. Most people take the 30, but they also offer shorter terms like 5 year. For us, 5 years a long term. In the U.S., 5 years a short term mortgage.
Must be more expensive.
I'm on a search actually with an agent in Florida right now, and the rentals
crazy, outrageous right now.
Well, like I'm looking for something very close to the beach, right? And I'm getting condos and small little apartments for like $5,000 a month.
Yeah, that's cheap.
Insane.
Well, no, a little condo?
Yeah, it's still cheap.
Yeah.
Why didn't you buy property in 2008?
Oh, I know.
Why didn't we buy property here in 2019?
Yeah, no kidding.
Right?
Yeah, my old real estate coach, I remember him telling us this story. The house that he bought was on the market for $14 million the year before. He picked it up for $2.1 million. And
back in 2008.
A year later, he just missed the timing. He got it down considerably, but a year later it was worth $1 million.
But
now it's probably worth 5, 6, 7, 8 million now, but it's still, if he had to sell at that time, but imagine being on the market for 14 million and picking it up a year later for 2.1.
Hey, why is the bank charging a penalty at all when they can make more money off that money now?
Really?
It's the bank, Steve. You just asked that question?
Really?
Because they
can't. Did you see the deer in the headlight look I got?
Profit.
Yeah, but you're still making profit.
Because they can make more profit. Because they can. Because it's part of the contract that you sign at the bank when you get your mortgage, is that you will pay them the difference between the higher of 3 months interest or interest rate differential based on the way they calculate it. So if you got a mortgage at 2.89% 3 years ago, and their posted rate at the time was 5.89, let's say, they give you a 3% discount. So what they're doing now is they're saying, okay, so today's 2-year mortgage rate, if you have 2 years left, is at 5%. It's at 6, so and it's a 3. So they subtract the 3, and it's a 3. So that's where you're going to get away with the 3 months interest. But when that gap is more, they'll still charge you the interest rate differential.
So what's the posted rate now? 6.54? A little higher?
Depends. Every bank, normally the banks are together. Now I'm finding the banks, there's gaps between them. So
here's the problem. If you get a 5-year mortgage today, and in 3 years you need to break that mortgage and rates have come down, you are going to pay a fortune in penalty.
A little bit better than it was 3 years ago, and I'll tell you why. Because 3 years ago, the posted rate would have been 5.5, and they were giving you 2.5, so it was a 3% spread. Today, most banks their posted rates are at 6.89, but they're giving you 5.89, so they're only giving you 1%. So at least the penalty itself will be more reasonable. It's still going to be crazy, but not as crazy as it was 2 or 3 years ago if you had to break it.
But if you go with an alternate lender, you're only paying 3 months interest.
Well, the alternate lender's 3 months interest, and most alternate lenders will do a 1 or 2 year mortgage. So the whole purpose, I just did a mortgage. So I've got a client who built a double, wasn't able to sell the second unit, so I ended up renting it. I've done a mortgage for him. He's got people that want to buy the unit from him, but because they committed to another house that's being built, they have to wait for that one to be built and then sell it, and then they're going to buy his. So we got him a 1-year mortgage, and it kind of makes sense for him because now.
What was the rate on that?
609.
Yeah.
Again, a little bit higher than you can get.
But for his circumstance.
But for his circumstances, It makes total sense. Total sense. So short-term mortgages are more expensive, but again, depending on your circumstances, they might be the better way to go.
And depending on where you see these rates going, I mean, I would hope in a year from now we're down.
They should be.
In the 3s.
Look at the headlines.
Yeah.
They should be.
It'd be nice if we're down in the 3s, and so maybe taking a 1-year mortgage and biting a little bit more interest than you want might be the way to go.
But it's a gamble. I mean,
it is a gamble.
Show of hands, a year ago, did you think rates would be this high?
Nope. Not even close.
I
never thought Bank of Canada would raise 1% in one.
Yeah.
In one, and
then 3/4 another time. Yeah.
But then saying that last year at this time, when the rates were already gone up,
but not much at this time.
But I thought we were going to be on the downhill as of now. We're still rising. Like our last 2 was a rise. I thought we were going to be.
I thought we were done in January.
So
honestly, everybody did pretty well. Everybody said, "Okay, they've paused. We're good now." Now we'll go through, and I expected for the most of this year to be rates staying flat and then maybe coming down the second. The fourth quarter.
Well,
but now it doesn't look like any decreases are happening until well into 2024.
Well, we ended the year average sale price of $691,000. By the end of January, we're at $612,000. As soon as the rate announcement came out that they were remaining constant, we've gone up every month since. So that's all we need. We just need a couple months of just.
Which, by the way, bothers Bank of Canada. You see, Bank of Canada liked that they came down in January. They don't like that they went up since they stopped. So
they want people to stop buying.
Yes,
they do. They're trying to shut down the market. I get that, but when I say they went up to 623, 629. Now they're up 646. So I mean,
but Toronto had a couple of really robust months. I think in April and May, and that scared them a little bit. And listen, what happens in Ottawa? It's important, but it's not as important what happens in Toronto and Vancouver.
So what are these increases going to do in July now? What's the market going to be like?
You know what? I don't know where we're going to be. I think we're going to be up. Our average sale price will be up compared to last year. Last month. But I don't know how much. I think that last rate increase kind of slowed things down a little bit. And it's not that we were on this gravy train, but the market was starting to rebound, and there was a lot more optimism in the market. That second rate hike this month, kind of just.
It's not the dagger, but it doesn't help, right?
It's not the dagger, but it's really loosened that balloon. There's air leaking out of it. Put it that way.
Yeah, people were saying again, really? They just went up again,
and that's why we
were done.
That's why we need a couple months of just stagnant, no rate increases.
Let's call it the take a breath.
Yeah.
521-TALK, 521-8255. We'll be right back.
Anyway, I heard Frank a while ago talking about, some people only need $100,000 mortgage. Okay, I'm in the position, I'm a senior. I would like to get out of the place I'm in, and move to a smaller community with a little bungalow.
Mm-hmm.
But the possibilities of my not getting enough for my place, which is totally mortgage-free, it has been for over 40 years, there's a good chance that it would cost $100,000 more. I don't want to deplete what little TFSA and small retirement fund I have left. Would I still qualify to get a mortgage? If I have a $700,000 place and I only need $100,000?
Generally, yes. Traditionally, through a traditional lender, it's all based on your income. So you've got presumably pension income.
Exactly.
You're a junior, senior, you said, or senior?
Senior. Yeah.
So you're probably getting a couple of pensions, right? So we would use those pensions to calculate what you qualify for. Again, for some people, it's more about, and you can amortize it over 30 years. Yes. Regardless of your age, no lender can discriminate against age. So you can still get a 30-year amortization. Some will come back and say, well, we think they should only do 20. And I'll say to them, you're not discriminating, are you, against age? And then all of a sudden you get the 30-year commitment. So
when they're only on the hook for $100,000 out of
exactly
100, it's not really a big challenge for them.
On any level, does a line of credit work where you're only paying interest if you're not caring about paying off the $100,000?
Yeah, the problem with the line of credit with prime rate being elevated the way it is that the cost is higher. So prime rate's at 7.2 at the bank, so you're generally getting prime plus a half. So you're at 7.7, where if you took a mortgage, your rate would be in the 5s. So,
but you're only paying
interest
right?
on that. But again, is that your goal? And again, this is where we would sit down and analyze your application and then make some recommendations as to which might be better for you. But at the end of the day, I would say it's the client that dictates what's better for them. Not I can make some recommendations, but you might be more comfortable saying, you know what, I don't mind the 30-year amortization. I'm okay that if I pass away and I have a house of $700 and I owe $85 on it, I'm okay with that.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. And what I could possibly do it with what I've got left in savings, but I don't want to leave myself
you shouldn't.
of anything that to get along on or for unforeseen things that come along.
Nor should you. I always say to clients, you need that backup plan. You need to have something to fall back on. The last thing you need is to be living paycheck to paycheck and struggling and stressed out over whether you have enough money to make payments or whether you have enough money to eat. That's unheard of.
We're all missing the obvious here. If you list with Paul, you don't have to worry about that $100,000. Paul will get you more money for your house, find you a nice bungalow, you'll be even.
Absolutely.
My problem is I have a niche house in the property that's a 100-plus-year-old century home with a lot of acreage, and it's something that a lot of people want.
But maybe somebody does.
I bet it's beautiful. I love
there definitely is an audience for that. But like she said, there's not everyone's looking for all that acreage right now, and not looking for a century home. But there is definitely an appetite and an audience for it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I kind of confirms what I thought. Just as a bit of it, I actually totally agree with Frank about saying once the prices start going up, they'll never put them down because they're too comfortable with the money they're making.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just as a point of interest, when we got our mortgage in 1977 in the country, it was a little bit more than anywhere else, 11%. It went up to 22 in 5 years. And we renewed at 17, and that's when I determined, okay, I'm paying this sucker off.
Yeah, no kidding.
Rates are that high.
And it's been mortgage-free for 40 years. So.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Congratulations.
You've done very well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. 22%.
22%. And you know what? The people who were paying that back then must look at these rates right now and go, this is a joke. These are so good.
Yeah. I worked in the bank in the mid-'80s as a teller, and we would have lineups on the first of the month for people to update their passbooks because they want to see how much interest they made. Because back then, even on your bank account, you were getting 11, 12%. So anyone that had $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, they were getting a nice, healthy interest.
When was that, Frank?
A passbook is an
mid-'80s.
actual book that you used to bring in.
In the 80s. In the 80s.
80s.
Oh, I think my mom was changing my diaper at that time.
Yeah, okay.
She's still changing your diaper.
I was 10.
A different reason now.
Yeah.
Listen, Steve was around when you used to go into the bank, and they actually had a bank passbook, but it wouldn't be typed in, the person would write.
You know what? You're actually right.
I know you are. I know how old you are.
I don't know about this passbook thing you're talking about.
So I'll give you an example. TD Bank, my dad who passed away a couple of months ago, but about a year ago, he goes into the bank and they take away his passbook. And they say, nope, you got to get statements. What statements? To older people, the bank book really verifies how much money you have.
Yeah.
If you don't have that bank book, you're stressed out. You think the bank is taking your money.
Yeah.
So I had to go back in for him and say, give him back his passbook. Like, you're not doing that, or we'll move banking somewhere else. So, but crazy.
All right, birthdays.
Kyle Miller, Jackie Grinnell celebrating their birthdays this coming week. And Brian Mason had his birthday a couple of months ago, but he's the big 5-0. He's with the lender, Strive Financial, and wanted to wish him happy birthday since I didn't do it a couple of months ago because I didn't know about it. Now I know about it.
There we go. Wow. I have two things. I have one of my newer agents, very good agent, Raj, celebrates 2 years with the company today. And one of my amazing agents, Tim Finley, he has his birthday tomorrow. And Tim is the partner of the wonderful Dora, who allows me to do her show every once in a while. And the two of them together, probably two of the best agents in the city. Awesome people.
And they still get along. It's amazing.
Dora and Tim are two of the best agents in the city, in my opinion. And I just want to wish Tim a happy birthday for tomorrow.
I'm putting money on Dora making him a lemon pie. Maybe first.
Oh, probably.
Is Tim big with the lemons, too?
Dora will be cooking up a feast for sure tomorrow.
Paul at paulrushforth.com. Frank N. at mortgagebrokersottawa.com.
And please continue to support local businesses and charities.